I am Wilbert Francis, Project Director for Post-Secondary Education at the Tarjan Center. The Tarjan Center at UCLA is a federally designated Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities and your host for today's webinar. Support for today's webinar comes from the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office through a contract that enables us to provide technical assistance and training to community colleges DSPS, working to provide equitable support, services and opportunities for students with disabilities, including students with intellectual disabilities and autism. We are excited to bring you today's webinar, Strategies 101 for Supporting Students with Autism Spectrum Disorder, presented by Dr. Nicole Smith. Dr. Smith is the first Director of Disability Support Services at Moreno Valley College. Before accepting this position at UC, he was the Autism Services Coordinator at California State University, Long Beach, where she started the LIFE Project for students with autism spectrum disorders. Dr. Smith has served as faculty both at Claremont Graduate University and California State University, Long Beach, and taught at both the graduate and undergraduate levels. Prior to her roles in higher education, she taught in K-12 as an education specialist for 7 years. Dr. Smith holds a PhD in education with emphasis in higher education, special education, and quantitative methodology. She has a master's degree in special education and 2 teaching credentials, multiple subjects credential, and education specialist for mild to moderate disabilities. Dr. Smith has agreed to take questions in the course of the presentation. Please unmute your phone to ask questions, or alternatively, please post questions in the chat area in the bottom right of your computer monitor. Before we start, I'd like to indicate that a couple of months ago we conducted a survey, sort of a needs assessment of the community colleges regarding supporting students with autism. At that time, we got 77 responses, and of those, 42% of you indicated you were serving 50 or more students with autism. Many more of you indicated that you were serving either between 51 plus students with autism or 300 or more. Having said that, thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar. And without further ado, I'd like to thank Dr. Smith for your willingness to share the wealth of your knowledge with the other California community colleges. Without further ado, here's Dr. Smith.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. Can you hear me, Will?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you all for being here on the webinar today. I hope to be able to provide lots of great information. And as Will mentioned, please feel free to kind of ask questions. And if they tend to be a little bit interruptive, you know, we might save them for the end. So we'll definitely take questions at the end. So just kind of to get started here, the objectives are to recognize our students with ASD, you know, with the understanding that many of them go through our offices for services here, but also maybe taking into account that they don't, and being able to recognize them and encourage them to use services in your DSPS offices. Also to understand the strengths and limitations of students with ASD or Asperger's syndrome in post-secondary ed, and also as opposed to, you know, K-12 and some of the experiences they have there. I hope to be able to provide strategies to accommodate and assist our students with ASD, you know, outside of the general accommodations that the Chancellor's Office suggests and requires of our office. Diffuse situations that can seem malicious or threatening, and also to be able to work with faculty in doing that, because a lot of times faculty have questions about individuals with autism and how to accommodate in their class, specifically around behaviors and disruptions. And lastly, to identify and select campus partners to facilitate referrals in crisis situations. So just to kind of go, I'm going to be running through some background here. Let me know if I'm speeding too far along. But autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects a few different aspects of cognitive functioning in individuals with autism. So they basically surround around communication and social interaction. A lot of times individuals with autism may appear rude or have a lack of understanding or just not be able to connect directly with their peers and or adults. Well, they're all adults in higher ed, but, you know, faculty and staff and so forth. And a lot of times they tend to isolate themselves or appear isolated. Also, individuals with autism experience restricted interest, so they focus a lot on a variety of different things. A lot of times these are developed as they're younger. So, you know, the classic example is mechanics, the way that cars move. A lot of times individuals are focused around computer science, things like that. But also, you know, keep in mind that there's a bunch of different things that individuals with autism, just as anybody else, has interest. But they really become kind of so interested and that it blocks out other things that they may be needing to focus on, especially when it comes to school and also social interactions. Lastly, another thing that they experience is repetitive behaviors, and these can range in a variety of different things. Individuals may, you know, bite their nails, they may tap a foot, something like that, but they may exhibit behaviors that seem odd and are repetitive. Also, just kind of to hit on the last point here, individuals with autism are very different. Individuals are different in general. So I think it's important to keep in mind that, you know, once you know one individual with autism, you know one individual. You don't know them all. They all have different levels of function.
I'm sorry, Dr. Someone just joined us, and I need to take a moment to ask that individual if he's mute their Please mute your phone. Put your phone on hold.
I was hoping that was causing that. Okay. I'm not hearing the feedback anymore, so I think we're good now. So as I was saying, you know, once you know one individual with autism, you know that one individual. They all have different interests, different functioning levels, very different interactions, so it's important to keep that in mind. And just one kind of last thought on this while we're looking at this little chart here. Individuals with autism have a hard time connecting to analogies and metaphors that faculty members might be using in the classroom. So if you have the opportunity as DSPS professionals to participate in Flex Days, I think that that would be a good topic to bring about to the faculty members. And this is the same for other disabilities as well, and even people without disabilities. Sometimes analogies are kind of hard to pick up, but you know, faculty members, and me included, use them a lot when we're teaching in the classroom. So I think it's important to just kind of remind them, or maybe to have them kind of bring their analogy back to reality and kind of hit on the point at the end of that. Okay, so just to kind of talk about some of the epidemiology, this was as of 2015 mid-year, so statistics may have changed just a little bit. But there's been an increase in prevalence over the past few years, and this is due to a number of reasons. One can be better diagnostic materials, more knowledge being produced from research and so forth. But basically, the ratio is still 5-to-1 male to female of individuals with autism, and the latest numbers are 1 in every 68 children are now being diagnosed with autism. Some other interesting facts, the financial burden of families can be anywhere from $3.5 to $5 million, which really points to community colleges and other aspects, offering free services for individuals with autism as much as we can. And I know some of you may be cringing a little bit. I promise to give you ideas and have a lengthy discussion at the end talking about how to do this. And I know I've presented on this before, and now that I'm at a 2-year, I have some additional ideas, which I think may be beneficial. So just in general, 10.8% of individuals with disabilities are in higher education. You guys are probably looking at that through the student equity lens and hopefully seeing a percentage somewhere close to that. And if not, then make sure you tap into those funds because that may be helpful. But just in general, 58% of students with ASD end up attending some type of formal education after high school, meaning, or formal education, that should say, vocational school, 2-year, anything like that, some kind of educational setting after they exit high school. So we're hoping to see that number increase, and possibly partnering with your K through 12 districts might be a good way to do that. We have recently partnered with a couple of our school districts and just trying to get a pipeline for students with disabilities in general into higher ed here at Moreno Valley College. But I think that even having a special focus on individuals with autism spectrum disorders would be beneficial. And 22% of students with ASD attend 4-year college, which is great. Again, the last point that I want to hit on for this is that there is no cure. We hear lots of different cures being mentioned in the media. We also hear some things that are that people are saying are the cause of autism. Both of those things are still not 100% proven yet, although there are some theories out there about causes of autism, and some of those to make sure that they connect, with information and research that's out there. But I know that the UK is producing information, and I think it's important to just kind of be up to date. So the latest thing that we've heard so far is that when women are pregnant, sometimes they have a high level of testosterone in utero, and that may have been, can be a cause of autism. But again, there's no 100% conclusion on what the cause or any cures, and I'm sure you've heard many of the crazy cures that are out there. I do want to hit that on the point that the vaccinations have nothing to do with autism. There's been a lot of research on that. So I just want to make a point here, too. If somebody could please, everybody make sure that their phone is muted, that would be really great. Thank you. Okay, so over the past few years, there's been an increase of individuals with autism spectrum disorders in higher education, and I've already kind of hit on the points of why that could be. But I think, just looking at this chart here, it's important for us to know that we need to build programs and services and maybe be creative with accommodations in supporting individuals with autism spectrum disorders. One thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on here in the presentation is personal care attendants and behavior aids. And I know that's been quite a topic at KPED and a number of other venues. But I think, kind of coming up with a system of what's going to work for you at your school and while meeting the needs of students and providing equal access is going to be really key. And we're really happy to see that in the new Title V regs, there is going to be specific reporting for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. So that was accepted by the Board of Governors, so everybody, I think, is really excited to see that and be able to outline what services we can provide. So just to kind of talk about some comorbidity here, I think it's important to understand as well, a lot of individuals individuals with autism experience many different other disabilities. And really, it's only considered a disability when it affects one or more daily life functioning outside of the original diagnosis of autism, if that makes sense. So a lot of times they'll come in and, maybe have multiple diagnoses, and I think, it's important for us to take those into account and to be able to provide accommodations thereon. But many individuals with autism experience different sleep and mood disorders, immune deficiencies, epilepsy, symptoms similar to ADHD or hyperactivity, mood disorders, again, OCD, intellectual disabilities, language disorders, and just understanding that autism is very complex. And, we have a lot of information about autism, but we definitely don't know everything. So it's important to make sure that that interactive process is taking place in higher education, and we're understanding what it is that the student is experiencing and how we can help them. So just to talk about some of the quick changes, DSM-4 versus DSM-5, this doesn't necessarily account for what we do every day, but just as kind of background information. So in the past, there were specific diagnoses that were related to autism, pervasive developmental disorder, childhood disintegrative disorder, Rett syndrome, autistic disorder, and Asperger's syndrome. Now in the DSM-5, they've tried to kind of clear that up. So there's only autism spectrum disorder, and then there's social communication disorder. And I don't want to say that, all individuals with Asperger's would fit in either of those two categories listed in the DSM-5, but there's a possibility that they would. The individuals that were previously diagnosed with Asperger's don't all necessarily fit in social communication disorder, but they may fit in autism spectrum disorder. So, when it gets down to specific diagnoses like that, I don't think it's as pertinent in our roles as DSPS professionals, but just as a brief understanding for those of you that are interested in medical terminology. Okay, so individuals that are transitioning to post-secondary education, as many of you know, experience a lot of different challenges, and most of those revolve around self-determination. And self-determining behaviors are developed in high school years, where students are learning to, either with disabilities or without, kind of advocate for themselves and be able to seek resources on campus, be able to understand the way that they learn, to be able to find different resources to help them be successful. So individuals with disabilities, as we know, have a hard time learning about themselves and what they need. And a lot of them are really great at it. A lot of K through 12 districts are really good at that transition piece, but some aren't. So I think developing that partnership with K-12 is going to be really crucial. And even working with them on curriculum is something that could be beneficial as well. But the main point that I want to hit on here is that individuals with autism have even more challenge accessing those resources, and even more challenge, understanding what it is that they need to be successful. And also, a lot of times individuals with disabilities, or even just students without disabilities, interact with their peers for support and things like that. Since individuals with autism have a hard time with social interaction, that's not necessarily a resource that they're going to jump to. And there's different things that, DSPS offices can do in encouraging those interactions, and can also be filtered through faculty and group work and things like that. So I'll definitely touch on that in just a bit. So social skills, many of you know what social skills are. Nobody is an expert in social skills. Nobody is the perfect person out there that knows how to interact with everybody, who exhibits all of these social skills here with perfection. It just doesn't happen. But we know that individuals with autism have an even more challenging time with social skills. Perceiving situations and knowing the consequences of behaviors is something that they have a challenge with. So, a lot of times when individuals with autism have ideas or things like that in their head, they just want to get them out of their head and move on. They don't think about, is this the right time, things like that. So coming up with strategies that are going to help them be successful and interacting in the classroom are key. Reading social situations is also challenging, being flexible in their responses, so kind of changing their ideas about the conversation and how they can be more proactive is difficult. They have sometimes issues with problem solving and coming up with positive ways to mutually interact with their peers. So a lot of times individuals with autism will think, hey, you know, this is going to benefit me, so I'm going to do this, and not maybe think about how it's going to benefit the other individual. And again, you know, these ideas that I'm talking about here, I'm not saying that all individuals experience these, and all individuals with autism experience these types of challenges, but many of them do. So I don't want anybody to walk away saying, oh, I know everybody with autism and they're all going to act this way. I definitely don't want to, you know, share that message. But I do want people to understand that these are, you know, the majority of the challenges that they experience. And they have some trouble utilizing theory of mind, which is, again, that ability to be able to perceive situations and understand what others are thinking or intending based on social interactions, facial expressions, body language, things like that. I'm going to move on to areas of difficulty here, but I do want to also hit on the strengths of individuals with autism because they have a lot. And, you know, there's been a lot of current research that shows what kind of jobs they're successful in, different tasks on the jobs that individuals with autism tend to excel more than anybody else. So I'll definitely touch on those in a moment. But here are some areas of difficulty that are experienced in the classroom. And, you know, these are all things really to keep in mind when, you know, counselors are having that interactive process with individuals with autism. And also, if you're interested in kind of developing a, you know, workshops for individuals with autism or a peer mentorship group, these are some things that you can really focus on, you know, just in terms of the academic piece of it. Obviously, there's other issues that can be a challenge for all college students, like dating and things like that, and those can be incorporated. But these are the areas of difficulty that individuals with autism experience. Attention, motivation, motor skills, so that would be maybe writing, so using typing or something may be more beneficial. Executive functioning, emotional regulation, that can be shown in maybe blurting out frustrations in class or in peer groups or with their faculty members, something like that. Reading body cues, social skills, again, a lot of individuals with autism tend to be isolated and have trouble connecting with their peers. So, you know, I mentioned just real briefly that having some kind of peer mentorship group or workshops, and we'll definitely go into more conversation about that. But that is something that I personally have a strong vested interest in because a little part of my background, my doctoral program, I focused on social engagement of students with disabilities in general. And some of my findings really revolved around individuals with disabilities finding a point person to connect with. And there wasn't any specific type of person that they should connect with, whether it be a faculty member, a peer, or a staff member. But, you know, just finding somebody that they can connect with really closely is important. Somebody that maybe checks in on them, that gives them some guidance and support. A lot of times it ends up being peers, and that's the most successful thing. But that social engagement piece is important to the academic success of students with disabilities. I do want to definitely highlight that piece. Pragmatics tend to be an issue with individuals with autism, variety of interests, again, figurative language, changes in routine, in the way that classes are ran. So if you can imagine, you know, in K through 12 or high school more specifically, students go from 8 to 2 to class every day. They know, you know, Monday through Friday that they have periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, when they get into college, it's different, as you know. You have Tuesday, Thursday classes, Monday, Wednesday classes, and that tends to be confusing for a lot of students. but as you see here, changes in routine are even more challenging. So being able to offer, workshops about what college is going to be like when they're in high school, possibly even maybe juniors, things like that is going to be really helpful to students. Maybe even encouraging campus tours, working with your outreach office to see if you can arrange that, just specifically for students with disabilities or even just for students with autism specifically. And then managing that sensory input tends to be a challenge too. So that could be anywhere from loud classmates, maybe a faculty member being too quiet, too loud, maybe having an accent, maybe lights in the classroom, just things like that can be a challenge for individuals with autism. Okay, so again, just another list of challenges here. Basically hit on all of these already. Oh, was there a question? No? Okay. So I think, just really being mindful of these things, and then, also keeping in mind too, when you have that interactive process with the individual with autism, they may not be able to properly articulate all of the challenges that they do have. So I think it's important to have kind of a list, somewhere where you can just kind of refer to and maybe ask more specific questions, to kind of hone in on what some of the challenges are that they're having. But as I've mentioned kind of in my previous presentations, I think it's really important to listen to what it is that students need. So, when you're developing programs or workshops or services or some kind of fancy or new accommodation, I think it's important to take into account how the student's experiencing college and kind of go from there. And I'll kind of talk about what I've done here at Moreno Valley College and how that's developing shortly. Okay, so in recognizing someone with autism on campus, I think this is a really good slide to have if you're doing something like a flex day activity for your faculty members, or you're putting together some kind of training for the campus, or you're needing to explain this to your conduct officer or somebody on campus. Again, this slide is a little bit, I've always had some issue with this slide just because I feel like it's somewhat stigmatizing, but I think it's important to know how an individual with autism may appear. So that's why I have the word may in there. I think being able to work with different entities on campus, which I'll talk about soon, campus partnerships, that's going to be the most beneficial. And being able to properly articulate what an individual with autism might look like or behave like on campus is going to be helpful to providing good services for them. Because we know that sometimes our individuals with autism tend to get into trouble. Their campus police or security may be interacting with them because maybe they're running on campus instead of walking. Or they may be interrupting a faculty member in class or not showing up to class, or maybe asking too many questions, looking like they're interrogating, things like that. Those tend to alert other peers, and they tend to alert faculty and staff. So I think the more training that everybody on the campus has in working with individuals with autism, the more support that student is going to have when they're exhibiting any of these odd behaviors. And I say odd because, an odd is different than it is in another country versus California or even Southern California for that matter. I think it's important to keep in mind the different social norms in the area and to be able to explain things like that because, for instance, something that's mentioned here that tends to be a conversation piece is may have trouble maintaining eye contact. So that, as we know, is also a cultural concern and sometimes even a gender one. That's a difference that, many countries have versus, California here. We kind of expect people to look at you when you're talking to them and not look too long. So, it's just very different. So I think, you know, just keeping in mind these different aspects. And I think, you know, using pieces of this PowerPoint when training faculty is going to be really helpful. And I definitely encourage you to make it your own. So if you don't like something on here, definitely change it. But I did want to kind of stop for a quick second and talk about some of the strengths that individuals with autism have, and to be able to kind of utilize those strengths on campus. A lot of times individuals with autism, because they have that interest, tend to be really great experts in certain areas. A lot of times they really like to focus on a task until it's completely done. And I think, you know, in building programs and services for students with autism, asking them what they're interested in and getting them involved is going to be really helpful to them and to you in building your program. So what can you do on campus? This is a good slide to have just to kind of help guide your office in working with students with autism, to guide faculty members for individuals with autism in the classroom, and even other departments like campus police, conduct officer, different things like that. Because, you know, individuals with autism a lot of times tend to appear like they're really mad or frustrated, and that alerts people. And so, you know, having these as a quick sheet to kind of explain to people is going to be really helpful. So I'm going to pause just for a second and see if anybody has any questions or anything. I feel like I'm moving really quickly here. Just before I jump into the programs that I think are really helpful to different colleges. I'll wait a second. Just feel free to chime in if you have a question.
So are there any questions? If there are, if your phone is muted, please unmute your phone. And if you are not asking a question, please mute your phone. Who wants to go first?
Not all at once. Okay.
I see Stephanie typing. Maybe this is a question.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, so Stephanie's question is, any advice for new programs? Stephanie, is there any way you could unmute your phone and give us some more context, some more background?
Okay, so
hi, yes, this is Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie. Go ahead.
We're just starting a new program here at Santa Barbara City College. And hi, Nicole. I actually spoke with you some time ago about your Life Project program, which I really appreciate. I've contacted a couple of different programs to get suggestions about what they're doing. It sounds like some of the four-year universities are having a bit more success in getting higher turnout. We just had our very first social skills lunch group with a group. All of the students that have been identified with autism spectrum disorder were invited, but we had very low turnout. And so I'm just wondering if there's any advice on how to encourage participation.
Well, I definitely would start with lunch, which it sounds like you already have. That tends to bring all students forward to different events that you have. But I've noticed also that marketing tends to be, kind of a challenge when it comes to, putting up flyers, sending out emails, doing things like that. But those two things are really important, and you may have to go through your student government or some office to get a flyer approved. But I think forwarding those out to faculty, sometimes faculty are really supportive of stuff and will show their students. Sometimes they're not, but it's always worth a shot. I would also recommend kind of one-to-one support as well. So when students are coming in and accessing services, you know, they're testing accommodations and so forth, I'd really encourage at that point to say, hey, we have this Friday group, and I think it'll be really good for you. You know, we're starting off with, you know, X, Y, Z, and I know you have some challenges with that. But those are a few different ways that I personally kind of advertise or marketed our social programs that we have here. So I don't know if you've already kind of hit on all of those, but I would definitely reach out also to your student government and see if they can help, if they can, you know, present in their classrooms and things like that. That's going to be really helpful.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. I had not contacted student government.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a question also from D. Williams.
Uh-huh.
A couple of questions. So are there any ways to gauge improvement over a period of time in working with students with ASD? And the second question is, such as a form or sort that has specific goals stated, or would it be ideal to gauge improvement on an individual basis?
So the answer to all of those questions is yes. I think it's important for individuals to always have goals, period. I have goals for myself. I'm sure you all have goals for yourselves. So helping students with ASD come up with goals for themselves is the way that you'll find the most success in them reaching those goals. So having somebody sit down with them and talk to them about what specific challenges they've experienced and how you can provide support for them to overcome those challenges or mitigate some of those challenges is where you're going to find success. So when I worked at Cal State Long Beach, we had developed a form there where it helped students come up with the different challenges they had and how to translate that into a goal. So in working with K through 12 students in special education previously, I've learned to become very proficient in writing IEP goals, and so kind of use the skill set that I learned from there in developing the goals and training other people to work with goals. You've all probably had to do student learning outcomes with program review and things like that. So maybe you've heard of the SMART acronym, but that is a way to help make that goal measurable. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So I think, you know, making sure that the student has some buy-in to that goal and then finding a way to track progress. You know, you can even have simple goals. Like if you have workshops and the student doesn't really interact too much, you have a goal such as, you know, I will have a 1-minute conversation 2 times with 2 different peers every workshop, and actually have that student measure whether they met that goal or not every week would be successful. You can also do that for the classroom and have them come back and check in. I think the check-in piece is the most important, and depending upon how you develop your program, it would kind of just go there. And I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more later if anybody has other questions. Just to kind of jump in a little bit on these university and college programs. So in my research, I found that, you know, universities are starting to develop these programs for autism, as Stephanie kind of mentioned. So at Cal State Long Beach, under the direction of David Sanfilippo, I created a program for individuals with autism. And it really evolved around starting with focus groups. And that's also what I've done here at Moreno Valley College. Again, listening to what students want, what their challenges are, is the first step. So, you know, I think going in there with learning strategies and all that kind of stuff is really great, but understanding what they have challenges with, because every different community pocket is different. You know, the students have different challenges there, different socioeconomic status, different ethnicities. Those all present additional or secondary challenges for individuals with autism. So in developing the 4-year university program, it was called Life Projects, standing for Learning Independence for Empowerment. was led by me, and I was a part-time staff member there. And what I did was I personally started out by going around the classrooms. I asked different faculty members if I could present in their classroom, and I asked for people that needed volunteer experience, people that needed supervised experience. I don't have a MFT license, but if you do or know somebody that does, you may be able to provide that clinical experience that they need. But finding volunteers to work with the students is really helpful, because I know a lot of programs are short-staffed, so it's really hard to lend somebody out for, 5 hours a week or 2 hours a week even. So finding students on campus that are leaders and that want to volunteer, maybe get into this field, is going to be really helpful. So that's what I did. And then we advertised the Friday, they were games and lunches. That's what it started off as. Actually, it started off more specifically with pizza and games, and the students got tired of pizza, so we kind of switched it up a little bit. But, getting $5 pizzas even will help bring students there, just having snacks, sodas, and chips, something to, get them there, and they playing games with their peers, having conversations. And if you use the playing games piece, individuals can kind of talk, and you can ask something questions at that point. It's going to bring up, hey, what are your challenges here, while they're playing war with the cards or whatever, what are some things that you experience, and make it kind of casual, but bring it back and say, hey, this is a focus group, and kind of pull in themes for how you can present your workshops. So again, that was kind of the program at Cal State Long Beach, and it really developed from there. So once we decided we had a good amount of topics that the students, felt that they were uncomfortable with, they talked about things like hygiene, about wanting a boyfriend or girlfriend, about wanting to go to parties, all that kind of stuff. And we turned it into workshops that would help them be successful and be engaged on campus and feel more confident about themselves. Getting jobs was another thing. And then our group got so big that we had to actually have subcomponents of the groups. We had to have one called the leadership group, where those are students that are ready to transition out of the four-year university and go on to grad school or get a job. And then we also had to cut it down again and say, hey, these are the brand new students. So it was really great to see that type of success, and it's even building from there on. And I'm hoping that they'll present at CAPED just to talk a little bit more about the even better things that they've done there, because I know it will continue growing. Another thing that we did there was I created Autism Ally. And many of you have probably heard of like Safe Zone Ally or VetNet Ally. And what these are 4-hour workshops that you train faculty and staff on your campus with, and use a bunch of different techniques, like give them a sensory experience, bring in a student panel, and you teach them, your campus community, on how to work with individuals with autism. Right now I'm actually working on creating one just for disability support services in general, and I'll probably present at one of the CAPEDs coming up. But I think it's important that the campus communities learn how to work with individuals with disabilities in general. But building one for individuals with autism is really key to having them be successful. I'm trying to think what else I did there. I think that's probably about it. But now that I'm here at Moreno Valley College, I've been here for about 10 months now. And, I obviously, when I presented about, my program from the university before, people always had questions, well, how do I do that at a 2-year? Well, now I have an answer for you. So the way that we've started it off, and again, I've only been here for 10 months, so it's still developing, and I am going to encourage the person that started it to do a presentation at CAPED as well, but and possibly even a webinar. But I had at first she was a staff member, and she was a disability specialist, and she had a vested interest in autism, And so she said, yeah, I will take this on. I think this would be something that would be really great, and I definitely want to create a program. I didn't necessarily want it to be my program. I wanted it to be hers, so I just told her, let me know what you need. And basically what she did was she started kind of talking to the students and getting them really interested in the program. And, you know, we had kind of mapped it out, and she had decided she wanted to do 2-hour workshops every Friday and have student support. And since in her job description she could supervise student workers, she was starting to gain the interest of the student workers and say, hey, do you want to be a mentor in this program? And there were a couple that said yes, so that worked out really nicely.
Meeting is now being recorded.
Hello, I have no idea what just occurred. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Great, thank you for being there.
Was that me that something happened? I wonder what
I
happened.
have no idea. I just like everyone else, I got thrown off.
Okay, good. I was hoping it wasn't like my phone kicking me out. Sorry.
No idea.
Okay. I'll wait just a minute or two if you don't mind, Will. Just
Thank you.
yeah. Let me know when you think is a good time for me to start back up.
Sure, thanks. My apologies, everyone. I have no idea why we got thrown off the call, but we were. I trust you can all hear me.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Great, okay. So let's see, we have 40 individuals that I'm seeing right now, and we were about 47, so we'll give a couple more minutes, and then we should be good, I think. Again, my apologies. By the way, we do have a request. Someone is saying they want to hear about the SAILS program, S-A-I-L-S program.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of getting back to that, so let me, okay, so what the individual had done is she had started focus groups with the students, and I told her to kind of put together some questions that are going to be kind of probing, you know, definitely not too personal, but kind of probing just to see what the students are having challenges with. And so that's what she did. And kind of a different situation here, and maybe a way to provide, you know, different avenues of creating this, because some of you are probably thinking, like, I can't have a staff member go and do, you know, the 2-hour workshops. We actually closed our office and still do at 12 o'clock on Friday, so it ended up working out okay. But now she is an adjunct counselor, And so the way that I am doing this, I hope I don't get my hand slapped, but the way that I am doing this is I am, to me, this is kind of considered group counseling or workshops, in which counselors are able to do. And so she is now doing workshops as an adjunct counselor. And I think that, we're still finding success from that. And she's still doing it on Fridays. I believe it's from like 2 to 4. And she's gained a whole, and I asked her to submit a summary to me of the different topics that she has gleaned out of the themes that the students were talking about. And so she did, and so she's starting to build PowerPoints and so forth. And I do want to kind of pause here because Long Beach, when I was at Long Beach, we had put together kind of a packet that we were selling in order to gain more money for the program specifically. It wasn't like a monetary gain for me or anything. But that was helpful in kind of getting money and paying for those lunches. And you may be able to tap a little bit of student equity too. That's what I'm actually doing here right now. My VP is very supportive, and that may be one avenue that you can use for lunches. You can also have students pitch money in and have them say, hey, it's $2 a week or it's $10 to get started, something minimal. I know that a lot of times students don't have money, so, I mean, you have a few different avenues of doing the lunch piece, but I think that's really important. And starting off with games may get the students there. But right now, she's started doing workshops, and a lot of these workshops are, I haven't seen her actual schedule yet, but she definitely listed things like hygiene. Students were concerned about their hygiene. Students were concerned about group work and how to feel confident in doing group work or how to get out of group work, which I am not a strong supporter of. But, I think students need to learn the skills to do successful tasks in group work. So, and they need some scaffolding there. But let's see. Another way that so finding mentors was kind of a challenge here at the 2-year, and they don't have like graduate programs. They don't have a lot of programs where students need like clinical supervision and things like that. So finding the volunteers and the mentors was a little bit of a challenge. But what she did is we have a human services club on campus. And so she connected with that faculty member, and they were, definitely happy for her to go in and do a presentation. She was able to get some interested students from that human services club. So you may want to look at the different clubs or touch base with your campus government system to see what it is that they can do to help support you. Also, what we did work out too is our faculty coordinator in charge of student activities has a small fund, and so she was able to offer a stipend of $50 a semester to our mentors. So that was a little bit encouraging to them as well. And then also I think really telling those mentors, hey, you can put this on your resume and this is going to help you get a job later because, you're a leader, and maybe even kind of doing a workshop specifically for the mentor. Well, you'll need to do that to train them, but do one for the mentors and writing their resumes, in order to help get them there. So that's kind of what I've done so far. Not me, again, this is my counselor that has done this, but she has gathered that student support, and it's well underway. I don't have any data on it yet, but we're finding some success with that. So I think it can be done either with a staff member. I think you can do it with a faculty member, either an adjunct or associate, or your full-time. If you can have them go away for an hour or 2 hours just to kind of start these workshops. And it ends up being kind of a departmental support, really, because, if you have a clerical person that can, help advertise, send email lists out to the students, things like that, just to get them interested.
Yeah.
And also, getting your campus partners is going to be really key, and I'm going to hit on that a little bit more closely in just a minute here. These are the student learning out. So, you know, if you're going to go try to reach out for student equity, I know for things like my VP is way supportive. So, you know, I know student equity, you would need to do something for all individuals with disabilities, but mine was okay with me doing something specifically for autism. So, you know, you may be able to see what you can tap into from that. But these student learning outcomes will be important to the development of your service or program that you have for the students with autism because, you know, if you're going, you know, to ask for money or you are wanting to advertise it to people, they'll want to know what your goals are. So these are two goals that are student learning outcomes that we put together, basically revolving around developing those skills for social interaction. And also, you know, those are transferable skills when they go into the job in the workplace because they won't have those, you know, same supports. There won't be an ASD focus group or program when they go into the workplace. So they need to develop those skills while they're here in college in a nice, safe place. I think, you know, when you're building your program, you know, kind of hitting back on that question that was asked earlier about peer coaching and personalized goals, those are really crucial. If you're going to need to be able to provide stats, you know, making sure that there are goals of the program, but even individualized goals, you'll see a lot more success from the students and more interest there too. You know, weekly meetings I think are important because they produce a sense of community and they allow students to feel a little bit better about, you know, knowing that they're not the only person experiencing these challenges in college. And a lot of times when I work with students with autism, I would tell them too, hey, every other college student experiences this too. You know, they experience, you know, being lost the first week or two of school and not finding resources. But, you know, we're here to help provide specific support for you because we know that this is a bigger challenge for you. Tracking folders was something that we did at Cal State Long Beach, and this is where students were kind of tracking their own goals and their progress on those goals. Branching programs is something that I mentioned about that was done at Cal State Long Beach. And then parent seminars, something that you see here is probably something that, you know, something that maybe some of you may be cringing on and some of you may be jumping out of your seat thinking about it. You're going to have to talk to parents because they want to talk to you. So it's either in your office one-on-one or have a seminar where you're explaining what you're doing and how you're supporting. You know, in some of the high-profile students I have here, that have autism, they have, you know, Department of Rehab coming with them. They have advocates that they've hired. They have parents coming. So, you know, invite those type of people. Have little parent seminars once a semester in the evening where they can come and, you know, be able to reach out to you, ask you questions so you're not having to use up all your office time talking to parents when you really want to meet with students. I think that is something that we found a lot of success in at Long Beach. I have not done that here yet, but I plan to. And I think letting parents know that you're doing something, you know, for their sons and daughters, and maybe even getting goals or ideas from them, too, is really helpful, understanding what those concerns are. Campus partnerships is really huge. And this, I mean, I've already kind of hit on some of these a little bit, but these are people that we've reached out to here at the 2-year. I almost had everybody in Long Beach involved in my program, but so far this is who we've gotten involved. So the Student Health Services is our, you know, health services department. They have an intern there that does mental health workshops, but she's offered to come and do a workshop for our group too. So we'll definitely be utilizing that, her to do that workshop for the students. And it may just be kind of reducing anxiety. It may be yoga in the quad, whatever. But I think just having other people come in and present is really beneficial for the students. And then Human Services Club is where we gain some of our mentors and some interest from there. Associated Students is our student government. I talked about how the faculty coordinator is offering a stipend to our mentors. She actually also offers, side note here, she offers money to our peer note takers in class. So I would definitely connect with student government because sometimes they have different things that you may be able to utilize in terms of benefits for students to help individuals with disabilities in general. Student employment is also really helpful. You may be able to utilize student workers as peer mentors, which I think would be helpful. Tutorial services. I know that there's a couple colleges that have asked for money to hire tutors to work with individuals with autism through student equity and to produce data and stats on that. And then leadership groups that you have on campus are going to be really helpful. I'm going to pause right here and also talk about the personal care attendants and behavior aides. I've been working pretty closely with the other directors and managers of the DSPS here in Riverside Community College District and trying to come up with kind of a district-wide policy and procedure of handling personal care attendants or behavior aides, now known as auxiliary aides. I think, you know, it's important to make sure that students have equal access. So if there are individuals coming in requesting behavior aids, you know, I think as a DSPS office, it's important to encourage equal access. So having them, I mean, I'm definitely not condoning hiring people to be their behavior aides or personal care attendants or anything like that. But, you know, I think allowing that to come in and kind of facilitating that is important. So whether you share my opinion or not, I think it's important that you develop a procedure one way or the other because there are going to be more individuals with autism coming into higher ed, and a lot of them have that paraprofessional or one-on-one aid that was traditionally provided by and paid for by K through 12. If you're in higher ed, we don't pay for behavior aids, but I think, again, it's going to be really important that you develop, you know, you work with your vice president of student services and your district in coming up with policies to make sure that your students have equal access. So I know that I've reached out to DSPS Solutions, so here's a little infomercial. So I would definitely connect with them if you have questions about that. I think they'll be really helpful in kind of advising you. So community partners. This is another really important piece. I think partners are great, period, because, you know, you cannot run a program. It takes a village. It really does. And I think as much as you can do to reach out to your campus partners and also to your community partners is going to help your program be able to continue going on every year and also to be more successful. So your four-year universities, you're going to have things like MFT programs, marriage and family therapists, occupational therapy programs. I know that there's a 2-year up north that hasn't used their occupational therapy program to help a little bit with that. Your College of Education is going to be helpful, social worker programs. And even if you're a 2-year, you can reach out to the 4 years and get mentors to help come in because they're going to need volunteer experience and things like that. So I really think, making sure you connect with those 4 years. Again, I know it takes time. They need opportunities for their students. And setting up some type of system or memorandum is going to be really helpful in getting mentors out there. I also think that, looking at different companies that are out there, I just recently went to a conference for something else. It was a Veterans Summit. But they had suggested going to your chamber mixers. That's another good way to meet the different businesses that are in the area. I do want to caution here about that, though, because you want to make sure these aren't money-making programs. I mean, it's fine if they make their money. I don't have any issue with that. But that shouldn't be their purpose, really. I mean, the goal for this, I think, in the Chancellor's office is to try to offer as many services that are free to students as you can. So, you know, just being mindful of the people you're partnering with and connecting with, if they're outside your university, I think is really key. So I feel like I really zipped through there, but now we have some good time here for some questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. Feel free to kind of type in the box or to, you know, ask out loud. And I don't know, Gail, I see you on the line. If you maybe want to mention something about DSPS solutions or anything like that as people are formulating their questions.
So Rosemary Scott has indicated that she would love to know your policy for approving PSAs.
Okay, so what my district had decided to do is, and this was after consultation again with DSPS Solutions, so please reach out to them for additional support. But what we decided is most community colleges, I think if not all, are kind of like parks. Anybody's allowed to be on campus. However, if you have, the classroom is different though than on campus. So if they're in the classroom, and really even if they're on campus, your district probably has some kind of policy saying that they need to be a volunteer. And so I would definitely check in with that first of all. And if they do have some paperwork that needs to be filled out, make sure that you help facilitate that. I would really recommend, even though you're not necessarily, you know, hiring a auxiliary aide or a personal care attendant or anything like that to work directly with the student, I would suggest you as a DSPS office to facilitate the process. So if a student comes to you and says that they have a personal care assistant, a behavior aide, whatever, to say, okay, great, can you have them come through our office? And have them come through your office. I would have them fill out the volunteer form, scan it, put it in the student's file. But I'd also create a form where you kind of go over what's expected of any personal care or any auxiliary aide in the classroom, because I think it's important to note, you know, that the aide is not the scribe, they're not the note taker, you know, what they are there for and what they're not. And if you're going over that with the personal care attendant or behavior aide or whomever, then the faculty member will know that too. So, okay, so yeah, I see that. Our district actually does not have volunteers fingerprinted, so that's one smaller thing that is a little bit easier on our part, maybe not the best scenario, but good. So it's good that you also do an orientation with the students. I think that that's really helpful. So hopefully that answers your question. I know that Gail Conrad had provided me some of her volunteer forms and also the auxiliary aid or form that they had. I know Mount SAC also has some good forms. We finally created one. I know that DSPS Solutions likes to house different samples of forms. So if you have stuff that you want to, I hope this doesn't flood you, Gail, but send them to Gail or to the general DSPS Solutions email. They may be able to post it up if they think it's something that would be useful to the district.
No, Nicole, I don't have to talk for myself, it sounds like.
Oh, sorry.
Because you're so good at that. But just so folks do know, if you go to dspssolutions.org, all one word except for the .org, under resources, personal services attendance, all those things that Nicole just talked about are listed there for you to pull up and look at and borrow from or modify so that it works for the policies or the culture on your campus. So as Nicole mentioned, you can use those, but if you have some great forms and you want us to put those up as samples, certainly just send them to us. There's a document, there's an address on there that you can send all kinds of information to us. So happy to add those to the board so that people have more to review.
Thanks, Dr. Conrad. So we have a question from Lisa. any assistance for career information and interviewing skills, or could you provide a webinar on this topic sometime?
Yes, thank you so much for that suggestion. We actually had, at Cal State Long Beach, we had created that leadership group, and those are the students that have been through the LIFE project for a couple of years, and they needed new topics. And so we started focusing on interviewing and practicing interviewing skills. So I think we had like a mock interviewing day where they actually dressed up, and you can even invite some of your community partners, your business owners, things like that, if they're interested in coming in, you know, connecting with them on some level, and maybe kind of saying, hey, well, you can advertise your business if you come in and help it out with, you know, something like this. That might be helpful. And I think I could definitely work with Will in creating a webinar, or at least assisting at some level, because we did see a lot of students getting jobs and being successful in interviewing after, you know, so many practices. I think that there are also some different computer software where you can connect with somebody via webcam or something like that. There may be like software systems out there, things like that, that could be helpful as well.
Okay, so we have a, oh, I thought we had a question from, we do. So according to Rosemary, we are resurrecting my class, which I used to offer, was able to be repeated up to 4 times under Title V guidelines. I feel this would be an educational assistance class, but I'm struggling with CNL. Okay, so we have to say what the acronyms mean for the people who don't know, with the repeatability class, unlike an adaptive PE class. I don't know if you want to comment to that.
Dr. Conrad, did you want to comment on that one?
Dr. Conrad, are you muted?
You are right, I was muted. So the educational assistance classes are no different from what you already had with special classes. The name change was really just to support the reasoning for it. So curriculum and instruction should still be able to view this as a course that you're offering and should still fit with repeatability rules that you think are appropriate for your population of students with disabilities. Repeatability is still allowed if indeed the student is making measurable progress, and you have to show what that measurable progress is, or if it's a course that's taken to support other classes. So if they were in a vocational program and you were looking at using this class to support them in learning the skills to get a job after they finish that, it's going to take longer than other students, which might be able to take that class at the end of the whole vocational program. You want to work with that student all the way through. So I think you should be fine if curriculum and instruction's having trouble. It's probably more along the lines that curriculum and instruction just have a hard time, that we work on methodology a lot more than some of the other classes that have specific content, and we're teaching methodology, and so that's hard sometimes for them to understand. Hope that helps.
Any other questions? So the questions that you ask may be different from the ones that we've heard before, but any basic questions for supporting students with autism on your campus may be asked at this time. I see D. Williams is typing. We'll give a few minutes for that. Any others? Please feel free to unmute your line and feel free to jump in and ask your question. Okay, we're waiting on. Okay, so in your opinion, classroom support should not be provided for by DSPS.
Can you be a little bit more specific about your question? I'm not sure. Are you asking me or Dr. Conrad?
And D. Williams, feel free to unmute your call if you're at liberty to do so.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So, well, I think my personal opinion, this is just me talking here, but our DSPS funds are limited. We only get a certain allocation from the state. You know, we have a required college match. The issues that I see with paying for classroom aides is that and again, this is my personal opinion, I don't think that anybody would be comfortable approving whether a student needed one or not. So I think, you know, coming up with that criteria might be kind of challenging. And then also, you know, scaffolding that away. And I don't know if your funding, you would have enough funding to be able to support all your requests over time. So those are, again, my personal opinions of the whole thing. I'm sure people may have other opinions, but in my case, I don't think I would offer that. I would offer that as something that the college pays for, just because.
This is Gail Conrad, not talking as DSPS Solutions, but just talking from our campus. And I think the fact is that if you start doing that and that becomes your culture on your campus, you are going to run out of funds. But there are a lot of programs right now where students with disabilities can, and the programs for them can take advantage of some of the funding. One of the key areas right now is student equity. So on some of our college campuses where I'm at, we have actually solicited funds from student equity and provided an in-class instructional assistant, basically, to help in the classroom. And part of that came about because we have math classes of 45 students for basic skills. And when you have a large number of students with disabilities in those classes, which we tend to have, they're not successful. So providing the in-class assistance has really benefited students in being successful and even having better retention throughout the semester. But it didn't come out of DSPS funds. It came out of student equity funds in order to lessen the gap in those areas.
Okay, so I noticed that we have a couple of conversations going on in the chat box. Perhaps if we can come back online, that would be good, so that I'm not sure if everyone can see the chat box. So there we go. So one of the comments that was made is that it seems like many of the regional centers are picking this up now. I guess they mean providing individualized support or personal care attendance. But the individual is saying not all regional centers provide this. And then the individual is saying that they are not always too keen on that. Just FYI, we will be providing a webinar on Monday the 28th from 1:30 to 3, and we will be hosting a discussion on tailored day services, which is provided by regional centers, and that may be specifically used for post-secondary education participation as well as workforce training. So just zip me an email and I can get you on that list to participate in that webinar come Monday. Nicole was saying that they, I guess you mean the regional center, Dr. Smith, should still follow your college's DSPS.
No, I was actually talking about parents, you know, just kind of a side note, parents being PCAs, I think everybody, you know, kind of has a challenge with that just because it doesn't, there's not a lot of boundaries in place. So I was just saying that, yeah, everybody needs to follow the college, so regional centers or parents, you know, all the personal care attendants need to make sure that there's some kind of rules in place and follow them.
Right. And we're getting another question from D. Williams. Again, if there are others who would like to ask a question, please unmute your line, or you could use the chat box. We're waiting for D. Williams to finish up on the question. The question is concerning confidentiality and skill set. Would it not be ideal to request more funding and establishing a program that does allow for classroom support? Do you want to address that, Dr. Smith?
Might be a better question for Dr. Conrad, but you know, to me it sounds like, you know, if the concerns are being presented from counseling and faculty, you know, and you suggesting that could be opening a whole can of worms. I don't know. And I think, you know, that's a really good question and something that really should be accounted for, but I'm not sure if it breaches confidentiality necessarily, but that'd be a hard bridge to cross. So, Dr. Conrad, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think in some situations that's what we're looking at with the college to career programs. Mm-hmm. You know, we're looking at funding outside of the college and outside of DSPS in general that allows us to provide some other kinds of supports, but it also has its own outcomes that are different from the college in the fact that those folks in those programs have to be getting into jobs by a certain amount of time. So it really depends on where you want to go to look for those funds. I don't think there's going to be tremendous increases coming to the community colleges for budget. We've seen increases recently, bringing us back up to 2008, but I don't think anybody's seeing gigantic sums of money that's going to take us much, much higher. And we're on a roller coaster in the state of California anyway. So if you do want to look at specific programs and offering those kinds of additional services, you're probably going to have to look to who can support those for you and provide additional money so you can do those special kinds of things. That's my personal opinion as well.
Next question is from Lisa. Are DSPS services getting more funding assistance from Student Services Initiative?
That might be another good question for Dr. Conrad.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know from my campus we are. I think from some of the regional meetings that we've been having on the Title V changes, folks have spoken to the fact that they've been getting SSSP and student equity money, and I believe the Chancellor's Office also spoke about the fact that if you did get those funds, they did not count as college effort, and people were surprised. So my gut level feeling just from that kind of interaction is that people are getting funds from those areas. How much they're getting and things, I don't think anybody's come out with a report on that. The first time we would know about it would be from the SARC reports that were turned in at the end of last year, and I don't know that anybody's analyzed that at this point. But it would be something good to look at over the next few years.
Any other questions? While we're waiting for other questions, if there are any, I'd just like to announce that the second webinar in this series will be held on April 8th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., focused on advanced strategies for supporting students with autism spectrum disorder in inclusive higher education. The facilitator for that presentation will be Dr. Jane Theophil Brown. She is the Director of Student Services at the University of Connecticut School of Law. I see a couple of individuals are typing. Any suggestions on monitoring measurable progress?
Go ahead.
No, this is just Gail. I was just going to say many people have been asking about measurable progress. Again, in the Title V changes, since we don't have student educational contracts anymore, and there is a page under the Title V tab on the DSPS Solutions that talks about what measurable progress can be, how it's defined, and gives some examples. The examples happen to be with adaptive PE, but that certainly gives you a starting point. And then if you have additional questions, you can either put it on the listserv or direct it to DSPS Solutions, and we can see if we can give you some more information. But there's quite a bit of it out there right now.
Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to thank you all for participating on the call by listening and providing questions for us, as well as our thanks to Dr. Smith and Dr. Conrad for the information that they shared. We will be sending you an evaluation, a very brief evaluation, so that we could receive additional input and feedback from you so that we could improve these types of events for all of you. And again, with that, thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.
Bye.
I was listening to a webinar and said, just now. No, it's done. It's done. Yeah. Thanks. You can open my door now. Thanks. Tell him. I'll get him. Someone will come out when I'm ready. Yeah.
Hello, this is Lizette.
Hi, Lizette. This is Will.
Hi, Will.
Hi. So I will be sending the PowerPoint over to you.
Great. Thank you. It was a good webinar today. Thanks so much.
Why, thank you. Thank you for participating.
Well, you know, I've heard Nicole a number of times. I've visited her program at Long Beach. Yeah, I've done a lot, but every time I hear her, there's more.
Is that right? That's great.
Yeah, she's really good. Really good.
Good.
So, yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to close this down so that we could facilitate the process of getting the recording completed and then archived so that those that are requesting it can get copies.
Great. Okay, well, nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.